Hello, friends. How are you? My name is Omar Harami. Thank you for joining us for the latest Kumi Now online gathering, as we learn about the rights of families and Israel's attempt to keep apart Palestinian families. Before we start, I'd like to remind you that this session is being broadcasted live on Facebook. If you do not wish to appear, please turn off your video feed. We would also love it if you could quickly share one of the links that are being shared in the chat so that others may join. We're now inviting people from the audience to tell us how you are applying Kumi Now back in your community, or are otherwise advocating for justice in Palestine and Israel. If you have an idea or a project you'd like to share for up to 5 minutes in a future meeting, please email us at kumi@kuminow.com. We also appreciate if you're willing to write a paragraph about your experience with Kumi and your evaluation of Kumi Now. Now it's time for our weekly activism survey. Please note that there are 3 questions, so scroll down for the third. Thank you. The answer to number 2 is the final answer. The law prohibits marriage between Palestinians in Palestine and Palestinian citizens of Israel. And the answer to question number 3 is the second answer. Israeli authorities have final approval over family unification in the occupied Palestinian territory. The Palestinian Civil Affairs Committee states that in 2014, they referred 2,000 family unification applications to the Israeli authorities and have not referred applications since then, except for few exceptional cases. As the Israeli authorities have stopped processing them, we hope that you will find this session interesting and informative. We'd like to start. Sami, our main speaker, who is a member of the Knesset, will be joining us after the news update on the ground, and he will be introducing himself. He is a member of the Joint List, an Israeli Arab Palestinian party inside Israel. So as it is the tradition, we will be sharing with you an update, a fast update on what's happening on the ground. Today, the Israeli police came into Sheikh Jarrah and applied for and sent out this letter, placed this letter, a notification that there is a demolition order against a tent in Sheikh Jarrah. The community of Jerusalem has built this tent to help people from all around Jerusalem and abroad who are visiting the city to come and sit and stay at this tent as a show of solidarity. Although today was the demolition order, it has been halted for unknown reasons. This picture is of Abdo Khatib. He's 43 years old. He's married with 4 children, and his wife is currently pregnant with twins. Abdo was announced dead after being arrested by the Israeli police in Jerusalem. And according to the investigation, that he suffered torture inside the prison. There are over 43 incidents of violence on his body. Muhammad Munir is he was 17 years old when he was shot 2 days ago by the Israeli army, and he has passed away. He is from a small village in the West Bank. Please remember his family, especially his younger brothers, in your prayers. Last week was the Muslim Eid al-Adha, which is the major feast for Muslims. And many Palestinians made it through smuggling or through permits, made it into inside Israel to visit the cities, Arab cities on the shore, Akka, Haifa, Jaffa. Unfortunately, there were over 50,000 Palestinians who went on picnics and visits to these cities. Unfortunately, 6 young people have drowned, and there are 4 people who are missing. So please remember the people who have lost their loved ones in your prayers. The cases seem that people were just they were in the sea and have drowned. This is in the Jordan Valley. Israel is exposing many restrictions on Palestinian farmers and shepherds. So a few hours ago, a Palestinian shepherd from the Jordan Valley was fined 2,000 shekels, which amounts to a bit over $600 for having his sheep cross the road, an Israeli settler road in the Jordan Valley. So the restrictions on Palestinian farmers, shepherds, the Palestinian communities who are living in Area C in the Jordan Valley continue to increase. This is, according to the sources, this is the first of its kind, fining shepherds for having their sheep cross an Israeli only road. So I want to check if it's if Sami is with us.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Sami. How are you?
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for leaving the Knesset and being with us. We appreciate it.
Ya Allah ya'tikum al-afiyah.
Definitely, we are a more friendly crowd here.
يعطيكم العافية جميعا.
Thank you, Sami.
Okay, we should be talking about the law that got to do with family unifications.
That is correct, yes. About the problem and about the law and the recent developments.
Okay, so the law is very, the issue is very simple. This is another tool for the Israeli government to control demography within the state. As a racist Jewish state, it looks for them as something very important to do to keep vast Jewish majority through any tool that they want to, and they can invent. So the main problem is the Israeli citizenship law at all. The Israeli citizenship law that was done at the beginning of the establishment of the state of Israel was a racist law. This law says that any Jew in the world has the right to become an Israeli citizen whenever he or she likes, whether they have any relationship to the state or they don't have any relationship to the state, whether they can prove that they are Jewish or not. If they think that they are Jewish, they can immigrate immediately to Israel, and they have the right for citizenship. This makes Israel a very special case all over the world, because this means that the vast majority of the citizens of this state are citizens in potential. They have the majority of their citizens as citizens in potential. They don't live within the state. They are living all over. They don't want to come to the state. But whenever he or she would like as a Jew to come, they have the opportunity to do so. Palestinian citizens don't have the same rights. We, the indigenous community, the Palestinians who are living inside Israel, we don't have the same rights. Palestinians are not allowed to return to their homeland. And Israel expelled 750,000 Palestinians from their homes during the Nakba. And then they prevented them through this ethnic cleansing from coming back home. And then they also do not allow our families to come back. So from the beginning, we have a very serious problem with the citizenship law, which in any modern state, this is a very important basic law. Now, according to this racist citizenship law, you have the opportunity also to gain citizenship in Israel if you get married with an Israeli citizen. So before this spoken 2003 modification of the law, till 2003, according to the Israeli law, if an Israeli citizen gets married with someone from out of Israel, he or she were allowed to ask citizenship and for family unification. This law, the old citizenship law, which was racist already, allowed Palestinians to get married from other Palestinians. And it took them some time, a process of a few years, that allowed the new husband, new wife, after a few years, to become Israeli citizens. After 1967, there were a lot of such family unifications. People got in love with someone from Ramallah, someone from Jaffa, and they got married. There was a process that they would pass, much longer than an average Jewish man or woman. But at the end of this process, you could gain citizenship. This allowed few thousand Palestinians to get married from another few thousand Palestinians from both sides of the Green Line. Gaza, East Jerusalem, West Bank. Now Israel dealt with our marriages, with our love stories, as a serious strategic threat. So Palestinians getting in love through this kind of ideology, this Zionist racist ideology, was considered a security issue. In order to stop this process, they made a modification to the citizenship law in 2003. The new modification said, the new change said that you are not allowed anymore to ask for citizenship or to recognize your marriage at all if you get married from the 1967 occupied areas. Of course, Israel don't call them occupied. They have different terminology. And then after a few years, they added a few other things to a few important things to the law that says Palestinians from, they don't call us Palestinians, Arabs living in Israel are also not allowed to get married from enemy states. This enemy states included marriages from Syrians, Lebanese, Iraqis, Yemen, few other states, and then later on they also prevents us from getting married from people from Iran. All these preventions are not also relevant to Jews. Any Jewish citizen in Israel can decide who or she, whenever they like, to get married from any Jew, also from including the enemy state, or what is called enemy state, or anyone that they choose. Now, this prevents the people who got married after 2003 from the ability to have basic rights. The issue here is not that citizenship. In any modern state, if you do not have citizenship, you can't have any rights. Now, this affects all of our rights. This affects the people of, first of all, being able to live together as husband and wife, to bring up children together, to live in the same house. And the fact that your husband or your wife, if they are from the other side of the green line, they cannot come to live with you. If they do so, they are considered criminals. Now, this makes you troubles with, first of all, having papers for your children, or having basic papers to do simple issues. And for example, after the 2003, first of all, they decided that people under the age of 40 or 45, I don't remember exactly, can't at all apply for citizenship. Never mind what is their situation. If Israel has anything against them in any security issues or not, they cannot apply at all. Now, when they cannot apply, they don't have the basic papers. So they are not allowed to drive in Israel. They can't have health rights in Israel. They can't have education rights in Israel. They can't have anything. So this destroys the life of any Palestinian family who had this problem. Just because they were in love, just because they were in love from the other side of the green line, or someone from Jordan or any other parts, in order to prevent the Arab Palestinian population to grow within the state of Israel, people did not have the basic papers. So you could have a driving license, but you cannot drive. Or like in East Jerusalem, things are a little bit more complicated. So part of the a few of the families that we heard their story in the last struggle, they were living in Jerusalem till 2008, and then they went to work in the Gulf states for 2 or 3 years, and they got back. So in your family, half of the children have Israeli IDs and the others don't have. So we have a few doctors that have finished their studies as doctors. And after all these efforts of 7 years of studying, they cannot work. They cannot work because Israel don't acknowledge their identity. People who can't have this health rights, it could, you cannot travel because you are afraid to go to Eilat, for example, the southern borders of Israel, because if you get sick there, you will have to go back to your hospital in Ramallah. Now, all of this was happening for more than 17 years. Israel, because they know that this is a racist law and it's against all the international human rights law that says every human being have the right to get married and build a family with whom he chooses and so on. They did not say that this is a regular law. They were saying that this is an amendment that they do every year for security issues. Now, of course, we went for courts against the security issues a few times because all the numbers prove that there is no security issues in this thing. And we won. in one of the courts, and we were able to help a few of the families. But in general, the whole discussion surrounding this issue proves the racism that we suffer from and the discrimination that the Arab Palestinian minority suffer from in this very basic, important thing. And imagine that people have to struggle for more than 20 years in order to live with their husbands or wives or children, or in order to be able to come for a visit to see the family and celebrate your daughter's happy birthday or any social thing. In the last few weeks, we had a miracle. We had a chance to stop this annual ceremony of continuing the amendment of the law from 2003. Not because the Knesset became less racist. No, the Knesset is much more racist than what it was before, but because of struggles between the opposition and the coalition, we were able to use this window of opportunity. And all of the joint laws voted against the amendment with all of the opposition. And the results were 59-59. So the coalition did not have a majority. So what happened now is that we went back to the law before 2003. Now, this racist law will not bring citizenship to all of, we are talking now about tens of thousands of families. Okay, they will not solve the problem of citizenship, but at least the Israeli state cannot prevent them from applying for citizenship. And they can start the process. And the state it will be very hard for the interior minister to refuse all the applications. So we are in a better situation than what it was before, but this is not a solution or what we were dreaming for as a solution for all the families who are stuck without being able to be unified as families. I will stop here if anyone has any questions. Tfaddal.
Thank you, Sami. We have a number of questions. How much time do you have, or we have?
Okay, I was voting. Okay, let's 10 minutes. Okay, sorry about that, but we're simply in a crazy day and we are voting on a few things. So let's say 10 minutes. Sir.
Okay, so we will take the questions and we'll take as many questions as we can. So hello from Germany. I know that two human rights organizations work on this issue. Saint Eve from Jerusalem, the Palestinian Catholic organization, and the Israeli Hamoked. Are you affiliated with them?
Of course, Hamoked Lahaganat Prat, the Israeli, it's a very important NGO that works on this topic. They are one of the leaders of the struggle against this racist thing, and they have a lot of files working for. And of course, I know about also Saint Eve. Our people in East Jerusalem have a very big group who suffers from this racist law. But the issue in East Jerusalem is a little bit more complicated than the rest of the Palestinians living within the Green Line, because on people from East Jerusalem, there are much more limitations and there are much more racist laws that tries to take, of course, I don't know who's the audience, if they know. The Palestinians in East Jerusalem are not Israeli citizens. They invented a new thing for them. They are called Israeli residents, as if they have immigrated to Israel, not Israel occupied them. So they don't have, first of all, full citizenship any rights. For example, they are not allowed to vote for the Israeli Knesset. Now, Israel, in order to do a change in the demographic numbers between Palestinians and Israelis in East Jerusalem, is putting huge amounts of limitations. or in order to give them residency, or they have developed a few laws that takes the residency from the people who are living in East Jerusalem. So if someone from East Jerusalem, for example, he and his family has been here for ages, but he decided to go to work 2 years or 3 years in anywhere in the world, they can take also his residency. So it's not just the issue of unifications of families. In East Jerusalem, things are much more complicated.
There is some confusion. Do the Palestinian children not get a birth certificate? The Palestinian children as a result of a mixed marriage from inside Israel, Palestinians inside Israel and the West Bank? And what nationality is usually written on it?
They do, but you have another problem, that you cannot register the father or the mother. Yani, okay, if one of the couple is a Palestinian citizen from Israel, if she's a woman, it's easier. Then they will register her children, but without a father. If he is a father, it's much more complicated. Then it's another process. But yes, the issue here, first of all, part of the people do succeed sometimes in the Israeli courts to take papers. But also the papers that you take are something which is problematic because it's not citizenship. Sometimes they give you a paper that allows you to sleep in your house, to stay. Or you have only papers that allow you to work, but you are allowed to work during the day and you have to go back during the night. And there are a lot of different bureaucratic issues which are not what we know about like citizenship, because citizenship, then you have different rights. So there are also a lot of different papers that you take for 1 year or papers that you take for 2 years that you are allowed to be with your family. It's complicated, yes. But the whole issue is this psychological situation that people have to suffer from daily. Imagine that they reduce your dream as a father or as a mother, that you don't want citizenship anymore, you don't want all your rights, you just want a paper that can allow you to drive your girl to school, or you just need a paper that would allow you to work. And then basic things. So then you lose all your basic rights as a citizen, and you start struggling for small marginal things in order to have just any solution for a basic daily problem that you might suffer from.
Thank you. With this election, people got very confused abroad, especially the friends and the advocates for justice and for the rights of Palestinians. Why did some Palestinian politicians, part of the Knesset, vote in favor of extending the law?
Oh, this is a very big issue. One of the Palestinian parties that was considered Palestinian, at least, that represents mainly part of the Islamic movement within the state of Israel, decided for the first time since 1948 to be part of the Israeli racist coalition against our people. And they became part of the coalition. Now, for being part of the coalition, you need to pay a price. You need to vote with the coalition. So this is why two of them, those who were fighting against this law for years, and they know how racist is this law and how much our people suffer from this law, because they were part of the coalition, they decided to vote with the government. And this is what's going on, by the way, every week. Of course, not every week we have such an important law, but now they have chosen to be with the Israeli government. you choose to be with the Israeli government, you are against the Palestinian people. You are against your people's interest. You are supporting the Israeli occupation. This is the government that is occupying our people. This is the government which is putting Gaza under siege. This is the government which is Judaizing Jerusalem. When they have decided to be part of the government, they have chosen to be with this government against the interests of our people. Part of what happened is this crazy voting against this family, and with this law that prevents Palestinian families from being able to be unified. This is a very big discussion between the joint list and this list that joined the Israeli government.
There is one more question. In the reports, the Minister of Interior said, at least in news reports that were read abroad, that this does not change anything. That business is as usual, not that no one will pursue the papers. Is this correct? And how legal is this?
Okay, it's not legal. Things are not a business as usual. We are back to the situation before 2003. And if the situation before 2003 was satisfying for this racist Interior Minister Ayelet Shaked, they would not need to do all this every year to renew the law. She failed in renewing the law. She wanted to tell her audience that business is as usual. Business cannot be as usual. People now have the right to apply legally. She can refuse as Interior Minister, but if she will refuse to all the thousands of people that will apply, she will have to explain this to the Israeli court. And she does not have good explanation. So the Israeli court will enforce her to at least recognize part of the files that are asking for these papers. I told you that this is not what we dreamt of. This is not what will solve all of the problem. But our situation now is much better than what it was before 2003.
One more question or clarification. Can a Palestinian from the West Bank in Ramallah, for example, return to the West Bank after studying abroad and marrying somebody from abroad?
We have maybe 40,000 Palestinians living in the West Bank who are also suffering from different racist laws that got to do with getting back and registering their marriages and their children, because till today, according to the Oslo Agreement, Israel is still responsible for all registration and papers that also got to do with families in the West Bank.
One more question. Does this affect mixed interfaith marriages, like a Jew and an Arab getting married from the West Bank?
The law was racist much before. In Israel, there is no civil marriages. According to the Israeli law, there is no civil marriages. Israeli citizens, Arabs and Jews, can get married only according to religious marriages. If an Israeli citizen, Israeli Jew, want to get married civil marriages, not religious one, they have to go to make the wedding abroad, register it. Israelis, because Cyprus is close, majority goes to Cyprus, they register their marriages there, and then they come back here as a married couple. Israel, till today, do not allow civil marriages.
Is writing to Knesset members as part of advocacy helps to open their eyes, or it doesn't really create pressure?
Writing for members of the Knesset is very important. Not just because of the pressure or if they will change or not. One of the ways that you sometimes fight crimes is that you tell the criminal that you are seeing him. That's all. Just shed light on the thief sometimes. It's enough that he sees that he is not doing his crime in the dark. Writing to the Israeli parliament and publishing also these letters on your social media or on a newspaper in the West or anything. This is very important. One of our challenges here in struggling against racism and discrimination is that the vast majority of the Western world still deals with Israel as a democracy, regardless of the occupation and of making Gaza the biggest prison in the world and the Judaization of East Jerusalem and more than 65 racist laws that discriminate against Arabs and Palestinians. People don't know. People do not know. And this is one of our mistakes as Palestinians. We don't write enough. We don't tell them the story because we think that we know. We think that it's taken for granted that all the others do know. So writing for members of the Knesset, publishing these RNA letters, publishing different things on Western media is very, very, very important. People don't know the basics.
Thank you, Sami. We're aware we took over the 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. Sorry for this.
Introduce Sami. I first met Sami with leading groups. He was an alternative guide, a person from Yafa showing people Yafa. It's important to have Sami in the Knesset, but it's also to have Sami also with the people. Yani, he's a wonderful person. You immediately fall in love with him. He's kind and he's he is how Palestinians should be. And thank you, Sami, for being who you are.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Good work.
Bye.
Bye. Take care. So we understand and we respect that Sami has to go back to the Knesset because they're passing laws and he doesn't need to be away of the room when a law is being passed. So sorry for not covering all questions. I tried as many questions as I was able to ask. We will move now to our advocacy session. We have a list of, on the Kumi website, we have a list of how to contact the Knesset, and it is usually included during the year multiple times, this part of advocacy work. But for all of the people who like ice cream, I'm sure you enjoyed the news of Ben & Jerry's. A friend of mine who's very much activist in the BDS movement said, we need to remember that Ben & Jerry's decided not to continue doing wrong. It's not that they did something that was right. They did not make they made a stand by not selling their ice cream in settlements, but also they need to make a stronger stand ethically, and hopefully this will be in the future. However, since Ben & Jerry's made their decision, there has been a huge campaign against Ben & Jerry's. Although there has been also an increase of over 21% in Ben & Jerry's sales since the announcement has been made. Both locally and internationally, the Palestinian market has started to try Ben & Jerry's. Many people around the world started to see, to show Ben & Jerry's that decisions of conscience make also economical rewards. So we're asking our friends to write emails thanking Ben & Jerry's. We have drafted this letter. You could use it. It will be in the chat. I have also, Ryan, I've also sent you the emails. If you could also include them again in the chat. So these are the 3 emails. I will add them now if it's okay. 1 second. So there has been a huge campaign against Ben & Jerry's from pro-Zionist movements. So these are the 3 main emails that took that helped make the decision of the emails of people who made the decision to boycott and to stop selling Ben & Jerry's. So as of today, they have received, we know, over 10,000 emails, hate emails or angry emails or frustration emails. So we're trying, please take the time, write an email to them and just say thank you. Thank you for making this decision. It's also very important for us that Ben & Jerry's also engages the market with ethics. So we will give you a few minutes now just to engage and write an email, make it personal, and please encourage others to write such an email. Thank you. You can use the emails that have been posted. For the people who you can send individual emails, or please ask others also. We're sending them again to continue to sending these emails. So thank you everyone for joining us today. A link to a video of this gathering along with all the links shared today will be available on the Kumi Now website and on YouTube in a day or so. And it will be shared in the next newsletter. You can subscribe to Kumi Now on YouTube and subscribe to our newsletter to make sure you receive them. We would greatly appreciate it if you shared this amazing session with your friends and colleagues, as well as information on our future sessions. Next week, we will focus on the right of the Palestinian. We will focus on next week, we will be focusing on collective punishment, and hopefully Beit Salem will be with us. So maybe it is one way for collective punishment by Israel is that they can send us all of the Ben & Jerry's ice cream and we're happy to eat them as Palestinians. That could also be a way of nonviolent resistance. I see Dorothy, our friend, is laughing. She's enjoying it. So, dear friends, it was a pleasure having you with us, and please continue. And if you're trying, we're encouraging people to buy Ben & Jerry's this week, eat ice cream. Don't worry about the calories. Justice will burn them all away. Take care and see you next week, inshallah.